This episode, we feature an internationally known psychic medium. He has honed his skills, his craft for the last 45 years, giving readings for people in over 30 countries. Author of Writing with Ghosts, Angels, and Spirits of the Dead, and Knock in the Attic, I'd like to welcome John Russell to the show. How you doing, John?
Dylan, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Like I was telling you off air, I mean, I'm really excited to kind of tap into some of your experiences and what you've done. You've got plenty of experiences, I'm sure, and a long list of things we could talk about over the course of all the years you've been doing this.
Oh, absolutely.
And I had seen somewhere, I think, that you had started reading for people when you were 18, around 18.
When I was 18, I started reading professionally. Yeah. I had read for friends and family from about the age of 12 on up through 18 and got really serious about it when I was about 15, 16 years old. And what made me decide to go professional was that all the people that I read for, I mean, some of these people had been to the then big name, rich and famous psychics and all that kind of thing. And these people were telling me that my predictions happened for them, that they were accurate. They told me that my insights were accurate for them. They told me that some of my readings were better than the readings they had with the big name psychics. And so I said, okay. And I was really in demand. I was really popular. I had people, by the time I turned 18, I had people that were driving like 200 miles one way to get a reading with me. So I
Wow.
decided, okay, let's do this professionally. And so that's when I started reading professionally, was at age 18.
Wow. And now you said that, from the time you were 12, you were doing it for family.
Right.
Did you have a knowing or an understanding of this even prior to being, what age did you realize that you were a little different than other people?
That happened about when I was about 5. Uh, the thing that opened the portal to the supernatural realm for me, when I was 5 years old, I was visited by this old black ghost. And I was sound asleep in my bed, and my parents had left a nightlight on in the hallway for me. My bedroom door was open, and I awakened just totally wide awake all of a sudden. And I thought, well, that's really strange. And so I kind of raised up on my elbows in bed and was kind of looking around my room, and I looked out the doorway down the hall, and there was this old black elderly gentleman appearing around the door frame in the hallway. And I screamed bloody murder because we're white and didn't have anyone black living with us. I don't even think we had any black friends at the time. So my thought is somebody's broken in the house. And when I screamed, he walked into the hallway around the door and walked toward my bedroom. He was as solid as you or I, had clothes on. I can tell you what he wore. I can tell you what he looked like. And not transparent, not translucent, not misty, just as solid as you or I. And I screamed again at the top of my lungs. My parents started to come running, and he began to disappear. And that's when he began to get kind of misty, kind of translucent, transparent, and then vanished. And so I realized after that that I had seen my first ghost. My fright was so severe that I convinced my parents there was somebody in the house. And my dad literally went and looked under all the beds and all the closets, checked all the doors and windows. And of course we were shut up tight. You know, there was nobody had broken in or anything. And they tried to convince me that it was just a nightmare, that something I'd seen on TV had messed with my head or whatever. And I knew better. I knew I'd seen my first ghost. Well, that gentleman came apparently just to open up the portal to these supernatural experiences that I would have for the rest of my life. And part of that was my psychic awakening, my psychic gift. And the way that I discovered that was I was, I guess, about 6, between 5 and 6. And I was out in the backyard playing with a toy. And this car pulled up in the driveway that I didn't recognize. And so I ran inside to get my folks, and I said, hey, there's some people that pulled into our driveway. I've never seen them. I don't know who they are. So they're like, oh, okay. So they came out, and they came into the yard, and they said, oh, those are friends of ours. We know these people. They're friends of ours. So the people got out, and they came up, and I was standing there playing with my toy and kind of eavesdropping, kind of listening to them. And they were standing outside talking before they went in. And all of a sudden I had this vision, and I just interrupted them. And I told these people, I said, you just went on vacation. And I said, you took that car that's in the driveway. You drove that car on vacation, and you have kids. You took kids with you They're not with you today, but you took kids with you on a vacation. You have kids. And I said, you stayed at this hotel that was painted this certain color, and it was 2 stories, and it was kind of oblong. It had trees that looked like this in the front, and the pool area in the back looked like this and was this color and all this. So the guy, the husband, was just kind of, okay, whatever. And he was just kind of speechless and didn't say anything. And the woman, I will never forget the look on her face, Dylan, as long as I live. Her jaw dropped and her eyes kept bugging out more and more and more. And my mother was like, hush, John, be quiet, John. And she looked at my mother and my father and she said, how the hell could he possibly have known this? And they said, what are you talking about? And she said, how could he have known this? We have just come to tell you about the vacation that we took. And we drove our car. We took our kids with us. We went to this hotel that looked exactly like he described. How could he possibly know this? And my mother, I remember she said something like, well, you know how kids are, what an imagination and all this. And she goes, it's not imagination. He described exactly what we did. And my father's response was, John, be quiet, go play. So that was when I learned that I had the psychic gift. I could read people's minds. I could tell where they had been. I could begin to predict their futures. I could begin to have these insights into their lives. And that kind of correlated with all the paranormal supernatural experiences that I began to have. So that occurred around between 5 and 6 years old. And it's been a constant ever since.
That's interesting. And how does that come to you? Do you just get like a knowing about somebody from within,
I
or?
do. It's sometimes I get visions, sometimes I get feelings, aromas, manifestations, physical manifestations. But usually in the readings, the best way I can describe it to you, Dylan, and it's not good, it's not accurate, but it's the best way I can describe it to you. Because people have asked me this all my life, like, how do you know? How does it come to you? And I said, well, the best way that I can describe it is when you're in school, you learn that 2 + 2 = 4. And you learn that's a constant fact, and you learn that applies anywhere in the world, okay? And I said, when I get a psychic knowing about someone, it kind of drops into my head as something that I've already learned as a fact. It's there as a knowing. And I know that what I'm about to tell them is factual, is true. And that's about the best way I can describe it. And like I say, that's not really that accurate. It's not the greatest description I can give you, but it's the best one I can come up with. But it does come as a knowing. And no psychic on the planet is 100% accurate. It doesn't happen. My clients over the years have told me I'm 80 to 90% accurate, and that's pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
And people get impressed with that, but I say, well, look, I appreciate it, that's good, but let's take the lower number, 80%, and people say, well, that's still really fantastic. Yeah, but that means for every 8 out of 10 things, 2 are falling through the crack.
Right.
And the things that fall through the crack can be pretty big,
Right.
So, but when I do have this knowing, when I do have a certainty, I will tell clients, I say, listen, this you can take to the bank. And if it's something that there's a percentage there that I'm not certain about, or something I see that's kind of so-so, I'll tell clients that, because I don't get everything in every reading as an absolute certainty. Most of the things I do, but there'll be a few things that slip through the crack occasionally. But
Right.
like I say, it comes as a certainty, as a knowing. And then I'll get visions. Like I remember one lady, right in the middle of the reading, I'm all of a sudden seeing the inside of her house. And I said, oh, your living room's laid out like this, and you have a mantel and a fireplace, and there's these wingback chairs and these stairs going up and all this stuff. And she was like, are you outside my windows peeking in? I said, and I had described the interior of her house exactly. So sometimes I'll get visions, sometimes it'll come to me that way. There's a wide variety of ways that it comes to me, but primarily in the readings, it's like this knowing, this certainty.
That's interesting. And then you were talking about, the 80% accuracy. I had an experience with a psychic medium who, she was nailing some stuff, but there was a few things that I had felt like she had missed the boat, but come to find out about a year later, she was right on. She was right on.
That happens a lot. And I always tell my clients, I say, if you don't have the way to record it, write it down, write down what I'm telling you. I'll speak slow, you write fast, take notes, And I can't tell you how many people over the years have come back to me and said, man, that stuff that I thought you was just totally way off on, a total miss on, it happened just like you said it would. And one of the greatest experiences was this lady actually worked for my credit card processor at the time. And she wanted a reading. It was the first reading she'd ever had in her entire life. And so I was really honored about that. And so I gave her the reading, and we hit the end of the reading, and she was just, her hair was blown back. She was like, man, this is awesome. She said, your insights have been accurate. Everything has been so fantastic. And then we hit the end of the reading, and I told her these things. I said, you're going to move, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be Nevada, and I think Las Vegas. And I said, you're going to stay in the same field that you're in now, but you're going to make a lot more money, and eventually you're going to own your own business in this field. And she literally burst out laughing over the phone. She literally laughed. And she said, John, you've been really great up to this point, but let me tell you something. I have no intention of moving. I hate Nevada. I especially hate Las Vegas. She said, as far as making more money, I'm pretty much tapped out for the field that I'm in. And it would take some kind of miracle for me to have my own business in this field. I said, write these things down and get back to me. Okay. And I gave her the approximate time frame that I saw this happening in. So she calls me back. And this is another thing that happens with clients. They forget. And sure enough, she had moved to Vegas. She was making more money than she had ever made, even though she thought she was stopped out in the field. And then she was able to start her own business in the field. And when she called to tell me that, she had to tell me that a girlfriend of hers that she had talked to about the reading said, didn't that psychic tell you all this was going to happen? And she was like, oh yeah, that's right. And she had completely forgotten about it. And then she had to call me and tell me, oh yeah, you were right. So that happens a lot. And it's kind of frustrating when people forget, but yeah, it's I always tell people, I say some things happen, you know, a year or two down the road even, and write them down, be looking for them. You know, if I predict it way far out, it's going to get there. So
Yeah, that's good advice, I think, because, you know, with my readings, I was able to record them, and, you know, I had went back and listened, and I was actually surprised at how much more accurate she was on some of the stuff that I didn't
exactly.
consider anything important at the time. I was like, nah, you're missing it. I'm not going to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Have you ever had any kind of formal training, or has this just been something you've kind of just developed over the years?
I've developed it on my own through independent study and through practice and through hard, dedicated work. I do have a certification that I got when I was in my teenage years of Certified Tarot Master, and that was an organization that's defunct now. And I keep that because at the time, I think that was just about the only thing out there that was giving any kind of certification for tarot readings. And I've always loved the tarot. I'm an artist and a photographer, and I love the art in the tarot. But I had this call to the cards. They really spoke to me, and I believe they have an intrinsic power in readings. And there was this organization, like I say, the Tarot International, and they offered this degree of Certified Tarot Master. And it wasn't a thing where you fill out an application, send in your money, and you get your degree. They had this rigorous program where you actually had to give real world readings, and the readings had to be written down. The people had to certify the readings, give their names, addresses, phone numbers, everything else, and send that in and verify that, yes, this guy did this reading for me. Here's how accurate I thought it was. Here's what I thought he missed. Here's what I thought he got right, so on and so forth. And you had to do several of those and send them in before you got the degree. And so I did and got that. So that led to my serious study of the tarot. And that was the fundamental tools and techniques that I learned that I still use to this day when I use tarot.
What is it about the cards? Is it like a guide for you to kind of pick up on things? Because I've had some experience with them, and they are pretty interesting and insightful.
Yeah, they are. I believe the tarot has an inherent power to it, and then I think that you utilize your psychic gift, and it kind of couples together, and that completes the picture. But you know, I like the tarot, and I don't have to use the tarot, but I like to. And a lot of times in a reading, I'll lay it out and never even look at it. You know, it's just there. And sometimes I'll do the reading, then look at the tarot as kind of a backup, as kind of a or an afterward to say, okay, is there anything else here to put in. And sometimes I'm led to utilize the tarot right away. But it's a tool I enjoy, but I don't have to have it. I use a variety of things. I've experimented over the years and been successful with crystal balls, with Ouija boards, with pendulums, with all manner of divination and things, and use them very successfully. But I don't have to use them. It's something that I can use as an adjunct if I want to, and sometimes I do. But the greatest thing is just having the gift directly, and being able to do what I do anywhere I am, anytime, any place, and not have to rely on any specific tools or anything. So that's the really enjoyable thing. And I tell people I try and kind of wean people off of their psychic tools that they use, and get them to use more of their direct gift instead of relying too much on the tools.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. There's just, I don't think, your own senses probably can really,
Yeah,
help.
if you really have a true psychic gift, you're the most sensitive instrument there is.
Yeah. So you've worked on investigations or like ghost hunts, correct?
Yeah, I started doing paranormal investigations actually and paranormal research when I was about 12, because I had this burning desire for the truth, and still do. And at that young of an age, I began to realize that in mainstream organized religion, and in the spiritual realm, psychics, mediums, so on and so forth, there's a lot of BS, man. There's just a ton of stuff that's totally unworkable or outright lies. And I found out that there were a lot of phonies, a lot of con artists in the psychic realm that manipulated people for money. And I found out in mainstream religion, there's a lot of phonies there. Some of the big names, they're just absolutely as fake and predatory as can possibly be. I attended some of the big rallies from some of the big name ministers, and I was just appalled. I was just horrified.
That's a good point.
And
I had a guy
ahead.
on my show that he actually he has an organization that certifies psychic mediums, and he said that I think somewhere around the tune of only about 20% they're able to actually certify and verify that they're even legitimate at all.
Right.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So it became a passion of mine to find the truth. And so much of, I was telling one of my clients today, I said, just because somebody writes something doesn't make it true. Just because they develop a religion or a system or anything else doesn't mean it's workable. We've got all of these religions and all of these systems and all of these things, and most of them do not work at all. They don't provide anything except a good income for their founder, for their inventor. And it's not to say that the other side doesn't interact with us, because obviously it does. And there are things that we can do to enhance that interaction with the other side. And we find cases for healings, and we find cases for guardian angel intervention. I've experienced several of those. We find all these things of evidence of supernatural intervention. But with all of that, with all of my experiences, with all of my studies, the older I get, the less I know and the less I understand. And people that will tell you, oh, this will work, or it's exactly like this, or the other side's like that, or no, nobody knows. We're not going to know till we get there. And communication with the other side at its best is so spotty that it's frustrating, because I'm sometimes given people's names. And I remember one time I did a reading for a lady. I got not only the name, first and last name of the person that she was concerned about, this relative on the other side that had died. I got her first and last name, I got their birth month, and I got her street address. And that was just nuts. That was just crazy. And I got, one time I was reading for this guy, a brand new client, and the other side told me, here's his mom's on the other side, and here's her name. And it was some kind of screwball, weird name like Barfado Mamujala or some just bizarre, just and like, no, that's just gibberish. That's nonsense. It can't be. And so I told the guy, I said, your mother's on the other side, isn't she? And he said, yeah. And I said, I think I've got her here. Is this her name? And I gave him the name. The line went dead. I mean, just totally, completely silent. And I said, hello? hello. And I thought I'd lost him. And he was just in shock because that was his mom's name. And he was like in tears. He was like, oh my God. And so those amazing types of things do happen. And unfortunately, not enough, and not all the time, and not every time, you know. And like every client calls up and it's like, oh, he's gonna tell me everybody that's on the other side and their name and their this and their that. No, wish it worked that way, but it doesn't. And what I've learned over the years is the other side will give me in readings for a client what that person needs. Now, it's real impressive if I tell you Uncle Joe's over there and he used to drive a red Ford pickup truck and da da da. Okay, that's impressive. What good does it do you? Unless Uncle Joe has a message for you that then is meaningful to something in your life. So when I talk with clients, I say, look, you know, we may get somebody from the other side, we may not. It depends on if they have a message for you. It's not going to be a parlor trick thing. It's not going to be, wow, this guy told me about 40 of my relatives on the other side. Isn't that great? Yeah, but did he give you any life advice? Did he tell you what's coming in the future and how to handle it? So that's the practical thing you have to do in a reading, and that's what I look at. And I'm always telling people that it's very frustrating for all of the experiences I've had with the other side. It's very frustrating because the other side plays peekaboo with us. You know, we don't get always what we want when we want it. I tell people you can't make appointments with a UFO, for example, in spite of certain famous ufologist claims. But I have found it to be the case that sometimes you can go on a paranormal investigation, or you can do a reading, you can do this, do that, and you're hoping for a certain communication or a certain result, and it's just not there. And then other times you're just stumbling around, not really focusing on anything, and you get deluged with stuff. And that is the thing that all serious researchers and practitioners from way back when have tried to figure out. That's why you go to church and you sing music and you sing hymns and you pray and you hoop. You're trying to create that environment for the spirit to come through. The voodoo practitioners whirl around in dervishes and chant and yell and do this, do that. They're trying to create that environment. We meditate or pray or light candles or whatever we do. We're trying to create that environment for the other side to come through. And so it's a tricky thing, and it's not an exact science. Um, for example, EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, recording spirit voices. Try that, and you'll find out just how hit and miss it is. You know, I've gotten some Class A voices, and then I've gone for weeks and not get a peep. You know, and so it's a very frustrating and a very uncertain thing. It's kind of like UFO research. We've been doing it all these years, and we don't know. So it's a hit and miss thing.
Now, I've always had a bit of a hard time with this, so maybe you can help me with this. So
Sure.
you've been on plenty of investigations,
Yeah.
and I've heard, like, I've seen on TV and, you know, in some of these ghost hunting shows where they talk about, you know, there's a spirit that's trapped and they
Hmm.
haven't moved on to the other side. Is that a real thing, or
I don't believe so. And
yeah.
yeah, I don't believe so, Dylan. I'll tell you why. I had a communication from the other side one time that showed me, they said, John, we're going to show you what it's like to die. And the illustration they gave me was driving a car. If you're in the car, which is symbolic of your body, you know you're in the car. You're driving down the highway. If you pull over, stop, open the door, get out of the car, you realize you're not in the car anymore. So that was the illustration they gave me. They said, look, when you die, that your body's the car, you're driving the car, you know you're in the car, you know you're in your body, and when you die, you step out of that body, you're gone from that body, you realize you're not in there anymore. So you're over there. You've made it. You know, people say, oh, you got to help people cross over that have died. They've crossed over. That's why they're there. They've died. They've crossed over. That's what that means. And then people say that, oh, well, they're here because they're earthbound or they're stuck. You got to send them to the light, or you got to tell them they're dead or whatever. Well, we've already established they know they're dead. The other thing is that from what I've been able to gather, spirits on the other side will hang around where they want to for as long as they want to for whatever particular reasons they have. And it may be to look after a loved one. It may be, I had just the most marvelous revelation the other day, Dylan. I really did. Of all the years I've done this thing hit me out of the blue. And it was, what if a lot of hauntings are nostalgia? because I was sitting there and I was thinking about, oh man, my old friends and old places I used to live and places I used to go and have fun. I'd like to go back and see them. What if people on the other side are like, I wonder what the old farm looks like now? And they go back to the old farm and the conditions are just right and somebody sees their ghosts and, so what if a lot of hauntings are just simple nostalgia? What if a lot of hauntings are people that have decided, hey, that's my granddaughter. I'm going to hang around, be as close to her as I can, and try and help her and guide her and protect her if I can. So we have to realize people go to the other side. They still have their sense of humor, their memory, their will, their volitions, their, what they want to do. And so we have to take that into account. And the additional thing I've learned through all of that process is people come and say, oh, well, we're going to get rid of the ghost, or we'll close the portal, or we'll do an exorcism, we'll drive everybody away. Most of the time that makes it worse. It's like, you don't close portals, you don't chase off spirits, you don't do this, you don't do that. Most of the time it makes it worse. What I tell my clients is, make peace with it. Why is it there? If you don't know who it is, why is it there? What does it want to communicate? And find some way to make peace with it and establish some kind of rapport, some kind of communication with it. And one of my clients one time told me, she said she was watching Sylvia Browne on TV, and Sylvia Browne said, ask for a ghost, ask for a spirit. And she said, that sounded like a pretty good idea. I wanted a ghost, so I asked for one. And I got one. And now I can't get rid of it. What do I do? And she said, I even moved. And she said, where I moved to, the ghost apparently got mad because I moved and tried to get away from it. So it goes up and down the street, setting off all the car alarms one after the other till they're all activated at the same time. So the neighbors called the police on me because they said, well, this has never happened before. And this lady moves in and now it's happening. So somehow she's got to be behind it. She must be out here like whacking on all the cars and getting the alarms to go off. So she said, fortunately, she said, how great could this have happened? She said, fortunately, the police came out to talk to me. And while they were there, all the car alarms up and down the street started going off. So they're like, okay, it's not this lady. We have no clue what's going on, but it's not her. So she said, what do I do? And I said, well, number one, you asked for it and you got it. And now you don't want it. Go away. I said, it's like you go to the pound, you say, I want a dog. And you get the dog, and you take it home. You go, I don't want this dog. And you move and leave the dog behind. The dog's trying to follow you, come with you. I said, so you asked for this ghost, you got it. Now you don't want it. You've insulted it by moving, physically moving to a different house in a different part of town. And it's like, hey, you asked for me, I'm here, I followed you, I'm coming. And why are you trying to diss me? Why are you trying to get rid of me? And so it's a little upset. And I said, here's what you do. You make peace with the ghost and say, look, I'm sorry I disrespected you. I'm sorry I tried to leave you behind. And let's get a rapport going here. And how about you watch over my house and protect me and protect my house and take care of the surroundings. And if you'll do that, then you're welcome here. And I said, that should work. If it doesn't, call me back and we'll figure out something else, but that should do it. So it worked for her. She was fine. And most of the times, that's the scenario. People have a lot of misconceptions about spiritual interactions and about ghosts and things. And one of the big things is it's demonic. Everything's got to be demonic. I haven't encountered that. I've never encountered Hollywood's version of The Exorcist or anything like that in all of my investigations. I'm not denying that evil exists. Obviously it does. And I'm not saying that everything in the spiritual realm is peachy keen. I don't think it is. But I have not encountered that. And I'm in the process of writing a third book now. And in this book, I'm talking about exorcisms. And one of the things that people use as physical proof of demonic possession is the great strength that possessed people have. They were a frail man or a frail woman. They weren't really big and they didn't have much muscle. And it took 5 or 6 people to hold them down when they were in the throes of this, acting out or whatever. Well, I worked at a state school at one time when I was young for a very short period of time. And we had dual diagnosis people. They were mentally retarded and had mental illness. And some of them were young, healthy, and strong. And the voices, the hallucinations, would tell them what to do. And they would act out and they would assault staff members, sometimes severely. And so in this group training of the new hires, we had to learn how to get a hold of them without hurting them and without getting hurt ourselves. There were state guidelines, and we had to gently take them down to the ground, and then we all had to hold them in these approved restraints until they settled down, and then we could, you know, go on about our business, let everybody get back up, and so on and so forth. So in the process of learning to do this, each one of us in the class had to go through the role of acting out as the client, and to thrash about and to be just as crazy as we could, and to not let anybody hold us down, and to strive our best to get away, get up, and wreak havoc and everything else. Well, even the smallest, slightest person in there, it took 5, 6 people to hold down. Okay. We even had a handicapped guy in there. It took 5 or 6 people to hold him down. He was handicapped. So, you know, that's, people don't understand that they make these assumptions about things. And yet, if you go to the normal real world, that's how the normal real world works. There's no demonic possession to it. There's no extra strength scenario from demons to it. It's just, that's how it works. So, you know, a lot of this exorcism, demonic possession stuff and everything, I just simply can't buy.
What's one of the more intense moments or things that have happened to you on an investigation?
I think the thing that comes to mind now, when I was, like I say, when I was scared to death of the old black guy, but that was because I was 5 years old. So that's kind of logical. Since then, I can honestly say, Dylan, I have never been scared. I've been startled. If you're in the house and you know the house is locked up and you know you're there by yourself and you turn around and somebody in a physical body is standing there, that startles you for a second, and then they vanish and you go, oh, okay, it's somebody from the other side. So, but I think one of the most intense things for me in a paranormal investigation, I did for the History Channel, we filmed a TV pilot in which I investigated the assassination of President Lincoln. And we got to go, we had the cachet of Atlas Media and the cachet of the History Channel. And by virtue of that, me and the film crew were the only people in all these historic places. We went to Ford's Theater, we went to the Mud House, we went to the Peterson House across from Ford's Theater where Lincoln was taken when he was shot, and then he died there. And so we went to all these historic places, no tourists, no other people there, just me, the film crew, and the docents, and it was the most amazing, incredible thing. But the energies there, and I write about this in my second book, you can remodel a place, you can change the furnishings, you can paint, you can do all kinds of things, but the energy of what happened there remains there and can always be perceived.
That's chilling.
And so the energy of what took place in all of these buildings was still there, and it was some of the most intense and some of the most dynamic energy that I've ever felt. And just the sorrow that emanated from Lincoln's assassination, how cowardly it was, and you know how it threw everything into turmoil. And so that was extremely intense. And then another occasion that I had, and this is also I write about in the second book as well. There was a haunted horse barn that people wanted me to come and investigate and see what was going on there and see what we could figure out. And I remember there was all kinds of physical manifestations that happened, and it was witnessed by everybody that was there. And like I say, nothing spooks me, nothing bothers me. But there was this one door, this one closed door that was like a storage room, or maybe used to be a stall or something. And when I walked I was like, I've got to open that door. And when I walked to that door, I became ice cold. And I'm a pretty brave old boy. I've been in lots of scrapes over the years. You know, I'm an old beat up biker, so it takes a lot to rattle me. But I tell you, when I walked to that door, it took everything in my power to grab that knob and turn it and open that door up. I wasn't scared, but man, let me tell you, it was an intense experience. It was an intense energy. And come to find out, there was some really catastrophic things that had happened there in that location, and that energy lingered. And one thing that happened was one of the horses was horribly abused there. And I think that energy was one of the things that I felt there.
That's interesting. And now, what do you think it is? I do want to go back to the Ford Theater thing for a second, but
Sure.
what do you think it is about energy and that it remains? Is it that everything's happening simultaneously and that you're just kind of tapping into that moment when it's happening, or is it something that is just so traumatic and so emotional that it just kind of sticks and stays?
That's what I think. I think it's the incidents are so dramatic and so powerful and so meaningful that they imprint themselves in the environment and remain there. And for someone that is sensitive like myself, you can come along and pick that up and virtually replay it almost like a movie. And so I think that energy stays there. I think energy attaches to objects, to people, to locations, to pets, to inanimate objects, all types of things. So energy is we wish we knew more about energy and the way that it interacts and the way it imprints and the way that we do things, the way it leaves these impressions, because it is obviously very dramatic and it is very real. And I think down the road, as we continue to experiment and explore and try, we'll learn more and more about that. But that's my main feeling, is that the energy is so significant that it imprints there as a kind of memory, so that it's not forgotten, and so that people can come and replay it in essence.
Yeah, kind of like Gettysburg and whatnot.
Right,
There's a lot of
right.
reports there. So going back to Ford Theater, that would have to be a tough thing to experience, being as sensitive as you are. Were you able to pick up on any of Lincoln's energy, or maybe the party that was with him?
Yeah, I was. The neat thing I that I discerned about Lincoln, um, and I write about this briefly in the book. He had a motto, something that just, I can't quote it exactly, but it was something like, "I do the best I know how, the best way I can, and I'll keep doing it as long as I can," something of that nature. And so that was how he lived his life. And so he was a pretty brave guy. He was a pretty ballsy guy. I had found out in researching when I was writing the book, he had something like 10,000 death threats while he was in office. So this is a pretty ballsy guy to keep going doing what he's doing, and he remained that way up until his death. And the interesting thing was, I picked up that he had had a premonition that this was going to happen.
Yeah. I thought I had heard something or read something about that one time. That's
Well, Lincoln
interesting you
had a
say
lot
that.
of premonitions. He had premonitions all the time. And so I picked up that he had a premonition that this was going to happen. And when Booth burst through the door into the presidential box, the state box, also called the state box, to shoot Lincoln, in Lincoln's mind, I perceived that, like, instantly in Lincoln's mind, he was like, "Oh, here it is. This is it." I think he knew. I absolutely believe he knew. And the really neat thing was, there was not a shred of fear in Lincoln. There was not a bit of fear. It was just like, "Yep, here it is." And he lingered, but between life and death for several hours after he was taken to the Peterson house, died the following morning there. And what I picked up was that his spirit was kind of actually leaving his body. He was kind of like almost already on the other side, kind of viewing things. And he was sorrowful that he had to leave his wife behind, his family behind, obviously. He was enraged at the fact that Booth had done this in such a cowardly manner, had ended his life that way. But he was also kind of stoic to the end. It was kind of like when it was obvious that he was going to cross over and that was it, and his physical body was going to be dead. He was kind of like, "Okay, here I come. It's time. Let's do this thing." And he went on. And I was really impressed to discern that energy from him and that strength from him. It
That's
was a really strong and fascinating thing.
that's interesting that you had mentioned that he had um over 10,000 death threats. I mean, he had probably thought about it a lot then and made peace with it probably at some point
I'm
before
sure
he.
that he did. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure that to continue in the office of president to do what he did, he would have had to say, "Well, okay, whatever happens, happens, because I believe enough in the work I'm doing that I have to continue this regardless." So very impressive, very impressive.
What do you enjoy most about being a psychic medium?
Getting to help other people. When when I predict something for somebody and it comes true, or there's something negative coming and I see it and I say, here's how to avoid it, or here's how to minimize it, or here's some things you can do to improve your life and make it positive, make it better, and people do that, man, that's rewarding. That's as good as it gets. And it's like today, I had a client today that I was able to give things to so specifically, and she was like, "Oh my God, you can't believe how much this helps me and how good it makes me feel and how much I needed this exact thing," and to validate a lot of the things that I was hoping I could do, or the directions I was hoping I could take. So that's the big thing for me. And then again, the search for the truth and trying to get the truth to people, trying to get people to think. Um, you know, it's like with UFOs, everybody's, oh, the Space Brothers, and they've got to be benevolent or at least benign. You know, they're all these years advanced, and if they have all this intelligence and knowledge and everything else, and so their assumption automatically is that they're benign or benevolent or whatever. Well, there's no evidence for that. What we do have evidence of is abductions, which is people taken against their will and experimented on against their will. We have UFOs tied to cattle mutilations. We have all this tremendous secrecy. You know, our government knows what's going on and they're not going to tell us. And so we have all of this. And I'm like, whoa, let's step back here a minute and look at this, people. It doesn't look too benign or too benevolent to me. And you have to extrapolate from humanity into the spiritual realm, and you have to extrapolate that to other races or other beings or other intelligences, whatever they are. And you say, okay, here on earth, like if I'm driving down the street and there's Dylan and he's got a flat tire and I don't know you, but I'm gonna pull over and, hey, you see you got a flat, do you have a jack? Yeah, but I don't know how to use it. Well, I do, I'll change a tire for you. I don't get anything out of that. I don't even know you. But it's, you know, it's humanitarianism. It's what we do. We care for one another. And so in all of this vast super intelligence, all this supposed benevolence and everything, my big argument, my big gripe and my big fuss is, isn't there somebody in all these intelligences that can come down and say, hey, we can't stop the volcanoes, we can't stop the earthquakes or the floods or the hurricanes or the tornadoes, but if you'll take this and compound it and give it to the kids in St. Jude Children's Hospital, we can cure all their cancers. Isn't there somebody up there that can throw us a bone? If you've got this vast a technology, this vast of an intelligence that you can zip around the universe at will, isn't there somebody that's also compassionate enough to say, hey, let's help these poor folk out down here a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there may be that, but I'm not sure that the powers to be here on Earth would want that.
Well, I don't think they would either. You know, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist or a wingnut to realize
Right.
that there are powerful, rich, influential people that control things behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
And one example of that, I grew up in Texas, and the Hunt brothers in Texas tried to corner the silver market. Remember when that happened and crashed everything, goofed everything up? So there are powerful, wealthy people that try and manipulate things to their own good, to their own means, to their own ends. And us working stiffs sit down here and kind of go with the flow because we don't have the power to do anything else, you know? So I do believe that there is a very powerful group of people. People talk about the shadow government and this, that, and the other, and there's a lot of credible people, both in the military, ex-military, government people, so on and so forth, that have talked about the shadow government, that it is a real thing.
Yeah.
So we can look at that, and my theory is, what I've gleaned psychically is that the shadow government's a puppet. I think that there are powerful people behind that are at the top, really controlling everything. And some of these people down here that think, oh, we've got the power and we've got, no, they're just puppets along with the rest of us. They're just up a ladder a few more rungs. So
Yeah.
I think that's definitely there.
And
And
there's definitely a lot of money to lose too, right? As far as curing disease and,
a tremendous amount of money to lose. If you cure diseases, big pharma goes away, and that's
yeah,
billions and billions of dollars in people's pockets. If you cure the energy problem, billions and billions of dollars go away. If you cure other health issues, billions and billions. They said that the manufacturers of the COVID vaccines, each one of those manufacturers is going to make billions of dollars this year, billions. And so if you cure that, all that goes away. And I've always told people, I said, if you want to endanger your life, if you want to get in trouble real fast, mess with a man's wallet. You know, mess with a man's wallet, you're going to find yourself in danger and in trouble real fast, because people, the bottom line is that dollar. And when people get this greedy and this powerful, you know, it's like more and more and more. It's never enough, and it becomes the game of power and control, and it's difficult to fight. But we have to try and fight it, and I think we have to fight it from a spiritual perspective.
Well said. Let me ask you a question. Are you sensing anything now? Picking up on anything?
Around you?
Just in general. Just in general.
Oh,
Not necessarily with me, but just in
well,
general.
I
Like,
always am.
yeah,
There's
that's what
always,
I'm just kind of interested what you're kind of picking up on right now.
yeah, there's always things going on around me. I have a retinue of, I call them the guys. That's my affectionate term for everybody on the other side that guides me, protects me, watches over me. They're always around me. They're always kind of making their presences known, kind of communicating to me, giving me signs, doing things,
That's like your
making
spirit
noises.
guides.
Yeah. Making noises in the house, moving objects, rattling things, doing stuff. So that's always going on. There's always perceptions of things going on around other people, out in nature. There's nature spirits, there's energies there. There's always things going on there. So it's like I'm plugged into a wide array of things and feelings, experiences, and
That's it.
discernments all the time.
How are you able to focus sometimes, I wonder? Like
Well,
with
it's just something that I learned to do over the
uh-huh.
years. You know, it never turns off, it never goes away, and I wouldn't want it to. And it's just something that I learned how to. I'm not going to say control, but I learned how to deal with. I don't think I control it in the sense of, okay, I'll turn it on more now or turn it off over here, whatever. It's not like that. It's just something that I've gotten used to, and I've learned how to, over the years, focus normally in the physical world, and at the same time still be aware of and integrated with the spiritual realm. So it's just something that I've had to develop over the years.
Can we talk about a little bit of your written work? Perhaps we could start with Writing with Ghosts.
Oh yeah, I love these books. First, let me tell your viewers. Um, every author says my book is unique, and you go to a publisher or an editor and an agent, and they tell you there's no unique book, and they say, give me comp titles, comp short for comparable. Give me something comparable. Give me 3 titles out there that are similar to yours. And so I have told everybody over the years, I've said, I don't care what you've read in the realm of religion, spirituality, mind, body, spirit, supernatural, paranormal, psychics, mediums, whatever. I don't care how much you've read, how long you've studied what you've read, you have not read anything like my books. And so a publisher friend of mine, an editor was a publisher, I sent him the manuscript. He looked at it and he said, you know what? He said, this is absolutely unique. There's nothing else out there like this. So he validated what I said. And I've had several readers that have said, you know, I've read this stuff my entire life and I've never read anything like this. This is different from anything. So my very first book, Writing with Ghosts, Angels, and the Spirits of the Dead, that came about because after we had shot the pilot for the History Channel, it unfortunately didn't air, but I became friends with my producer, and we started working together to try and utilize my psychic talent, get me on another TV show, develop another TV show. And as we were working on that, and I have to mention, I've been a biker since I was about 15. And so I began to have all these incredible experiences that were related primarily to my motorcycle riding. And I've ridden all my life, but all of a sudden these experiences attached to being on the bike, to the locations I went to on the bike, and so on and so forth. So my producer said, you know what? He said, why don't you take some of these experiences and just do a little short blog, just little short snippets of things that when we go to TV networks, we can say, hey, look at this. You know, here's some things that you can look at that are an example of what we're talking about. Because the idea that I had for the show at the time, I said, let's do a paranormal, then came Bronson. And so that was the focus of it. And so this covered a very short period of time, actually about a year or two's period of time where these experiences happened. And I looked at them one day and I said, you know, these things are, even for what I've experienced, these are wild. These are phenomenal. Some of these things are just so incredible. I've got to expand them into the full detail of everything that happened, everything that I experienced, and group them together and get them out there as a book. And so that's how that came about. And I'm writing with Ghost Angels and Spirits of the Dead. It all centers on being on the bike and riding the motorcycle.
Yeah, that sounds unique. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. It's unique. It has a lot of neat aspects to it. You've got the paranormal investigation. You've got the supernatural manifestations. You've got the travel on the motorcycle. There's some flashbacks to my old hometown. There's UFO experiences. There's all kinds of things in there. So it's really neat.
You've had UFO experiences?
Oh Lord.
Do tell. Do tell.
Let me tell you one from that book. Um, I was, I guess, close to 20, somewhere around in there. And I had all this plethora of paranormal experiences since I was a kid, like tons of stuff already. And like I say, these are not things I envisioned or dreamed or meditated or hallucinated or whatever. These occurred on the physical realm. And in spite of that, I didn't believe in UFOs. It's like, nope, no, not a deal, not a thing. I had read the books, I'd read the magazines, I'd seen people talk about them on TV. I said, you're nuts. No, ain't happening. I don't believe it. So I had left out of this building that I was in, and this was back in West Texas, and we have very violent weather there, a lot of hail, a lot of thunderstorms, tornadoes, and so on and so forth. So I stepped out this door, and I wasn't on the bike then. I was in my car, and the car was parked across this narrow 2-lane street. I could see it in the parking lot. It was just a little short walk across the street. I could see it from where I stepped out the door. And when I stepped out the door, the first thing that hits me in the face is this blast of wind. And I'm like, oh boy, and I look up and it's overcast and clouds are kind of rolling a little bit. And I said, well, we must be in for it. So I'm standing there and I look over at my car and I think, well, I better run for my car before it hits. And down in the parking lot, attached to the low clouds up above, but down in the parking lot, touching the asphalt, was this circular column of cloud. And as I stood there and watched it, there were these glowing orbs that would kind of emerge, not all the way out of the cloud, but just kind of come up out of the surface and then recede back into it. And they were red and yellow and orange and green and purple. And I'm like, okay. And I looked at this thing, and one of the strange things, and now that was strange enough, but the strangest thing I noticed was at the base of the cloud, there was some debris in the parking lot, papers and stuff and paper cups, whatever, scattered around. And none of that was blowing around at the base of the cloud. It was all completely perfectly still while this cloud's rolling and boiling and all these glowing orbs are emerging and then receding back into it and all this. So I'm like, okay. And I'm watching this thing and I get this totally irrational, bizarre urge to walk toward the cloud, to walk toward the parking lot where the cloud is. So I take a few steps toward the cloud and it moves toward me. I stop and it stops. I back up a few steps and it backs up. I take a few steps forward, it advances toward me. I back up and it backs up. So I'm like, okay, I've gone nuts. I'm crazy. I've had a stroke or something. I'm a young guy, but this is it. I've lost it. I've lost my friggin' mind. So about this time, I'm standing there by the door that I came out of, and it opens. The guy whacks me in the back with the door, and he's like, oh man, I'm sorry. So what are you doing standing so close to the door? And then before I can even answer, he looks up and he says, oh wow, looks like we're in for it. And then he looks over in the parking lot and he goes, what in the hell is that? So I said, okay, I'm not nuts, because he sees it too. I said, but watch this. And I walk toward it and it advances towards me. And I back up and it backs up. And I walk toward it and it advances towards me. And I back up and it backs up. And he sees this. So I look at him and say, isn't that the weirdest thing you've ever seen? He looks at me like I'm the weirdest thing he's ever seen. He says, bye. And he leaves. He runs down the alley. His car's parked the other way. So I'm left there with this thing. And I'm like, what in God's name do I do now? Well, all of a sudden, it lifts back up into the clouds overhead and they all start passing over. And I'm like, okay. So I run to my car and I get in my car And I get out and I start driving. And now I grew up in this town. I know all the streets everywhere in this town like the back of my hand, literally. I could go back there to this day still. And so I know all the streets I'm on. I know where I'm going and all this. Well, it starts to rain. Now, Dylan, this is not one of those everything's bigger in Texas stories. I mean, in Texas, where we lived there, it would rain. In 20 minutes, it would flood your yard. There'd be water standing in your yard. Underpasses would be flooded. Streets would be running with water. That could occur in 20 minutes time. So I'm used to the heavy rain, but this rain starts coming down, and this is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. The rain is literally so hard that with my wipers on high, my headlights on, I can't see a foot or two past the hood of my car. And I'm looking out the passenger window. There's cars angle parked on the street at the meters. And if I lean over as far as I can and look out the passenger window, I can't see the cars that are angle parked on the street. That's how hard it's raining. And I'm starting to panic because, like, man, I'm going to hit something. I'm going to sideswipe somebody. And sure enough, you could barely see the glow of the stoplight and through the rain. And my headlights picked up the bumper of the car in front of me that was stopped at the light just in time for me to slam on the brakes and keep from hitting it, even though I'm going slow. And then behind me, the car behind me nearly whacks me the same way. And I'm like, man, what the hell? And I'm trying to look for a parking space to pull over, and I can't because I can't see the parking spaces. I can't see the cars over there. I can't see anything. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so the light changes. We start to move. Well, I've been counting the intersections. I know where I'm at. I'm on Twig Street, which is the backside of Beauregard Street, back behind Beauregard Street. On Beauregard Street sat Sears. And Sears downstairs had one of the best sporting goods departments on the planet. And I thought, okay, the parking lot behind Sears was on Twig. And I said, okay, I'll turn up Twig. If I can see that entrance to the parking lot, if I can make that out, I'll go in there, I'll park. I don't care if I get soaking wet. I'll go in Sears and I'll wait the storm out and look at the sporting goods. So I turn the corner and we're poking along and I'm leaned over. I'm still afraid I'm going to sideswipe these cars that are angle parked on the street. And I am leaned over in my seat, holding on to the steering wheel, trying to look out the passenger window so I don't sideswipe these cars. And right now, the rain stops. Absolutely, totally, completely stops. I don't mean it lets up. I don't mean it lightens up. I mean, 1 minute I can see about 1 to 2 feet past the end of the hood of my car. Literally the next second, there's no rain anywhere in sight. Total visibility is returned. Literally in 1 second's time. There's not even a mist hit in the windshield. I have to turn my wipers off.
That's crazy.
And I look in my rearview mirror. I can see all the way down the street. Now it's still overcast, but I can see all the way down the street. I've got perfect visibility in front of me. There's not a mist hit in the windshield. The rain has just totally stopped. And I'm like, what in God's name is this? Well, about this time, the cars that are coming our way in the other lane start swerving into our lane, and people are honking their horns at them, and people are stopping at odd angles, and people are rolling down their windows and pointing, and people are jumping out of their cars, leaving the doors open, jumping out into the street and pointing up at the sky. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is why the rain stopped instantly, is because there's an F5 tornado and it's coming down, it's fixing to kill us all. And this is one of the weird weather phenomenons that occurs around tornadoes. And I'm like, damn it, I'm too young to die. And that's the thought that's going through my head. So I look up where they're pointing, and they're pointing over the Sears building. By then I'm close enough to the parking lot, I can see the rear corner of the Sears building and the entrance to the parking lot. I'm almost there. And about 20, 30 feet over the Sears building is a silver UFO disc sitting there about 30 to 50 feet wide, just hovering over the rear corner of the Sears building. And that's what everybody was pointing at. No flames, no sound, no smoke, no nothing, just sitting there hovering over the Sears building. And I literally did a cartoon eye rub and looked back up, and yep, that sucker's still there. So I started to get out. I grabbed my door handle, and when I did, the UFO just barely perceptibly moved, just very, very slightly. And the clouds came rushing from behind it, covered it up. And 1 second later, the rain was back in the full intensity it was before. So I'm watching the guy in front of me. And I said, if I hit this guy, I don't care. My insurance will cover it. I still don't believe what I've seen. So he turns into the Sears parking lot. And I'm like, all right. So he parks. And I park next to him, nearly sideswipe him. He jumps out. I see his dome light come on dimly through the rain. He starts running for the Sears building. I jump out instantly, soaking wet. And the rain's coming down so hard it hurts. So I run, and Sears had a little, like an airlock, a little vestibule there. And inside there, you went down to the basement, and then you went through another set of doors into the store. So he's standing there in the vestibule on the carpet there that you wipe your feet on, those mats you wipe your feet on when you come in. And he's just standing there, just hanging his head, just looking down, sopping wet. I remember he wore glasses. He hadn't even cleaned his glasses. His glasses were beaded with water. He's dripping water. I'm dripping water. And I walked around in front of him, and I stood there for a little bit, and he didn't even recognize I was there. He was just staring down. And I said, "Excuse me, man." He looked up and kind of focused on me, and I said, "Did you see what I just saw?" And he said, "Yep, but I damn sure ain't going to tell nobody." And he sidestepped me and walked through the store. And you got to remember, this is back like somewhere around the 70s. And people, if you told people you saw a UFO, you're crazy, you're nuts. Right. So, yeah, I ain't going to tell nobody. So that was when I realized, okay, they are here. They are real. I don't know whose they are. I don't know what they are. I don't know where they come from. But I'll be damned, there is one. I've seen it. So I had to change religions. Talk about the search for the truth. I had to swallow it because there it was in the presence of witnesses. They saw it before I did. And so that was one of my most dramatic UFO experiences. And then I've had several since I've been here in Florida. So it's, they're there, they're real. There's no question about it. And but I don't know whose they are. I don't know where they come from. And that right. information is seemingly hard to pluck out of the psychic air. It's like, it's hard to get. But I believe that there are other intelligences, other species coming from other worlds. And the reluctance for the contact, I don't know. I don't have a clue. But something's got to break. Something's got to be imminent. We have the Pentagon now that has admitted that they have in their possession anomalous UFO debris that they're testing. The Pentagon said that in the mainstream news. We've got Lou Elizondo coming out and saying all these things. We had the former director of national intelligence coming out and saying, hey, these things are real. We're picking them up on our satellites. We're picking them up on multiple sensors. We have multiple witnesses. What you've seen just scratches the surface of it. And so then I saw something the other day that somebody that's an investigator that has a source, and the source told him, man, all this grainy footage and stuff that's coming out, you think that's impressive? He said, we have crystal clear, sharp photographs of craft 50 feet away from the fighter aircraft, from the jets. We have crystal clear, sharp photographs from 50 feet away. They're that close. So he said, we have stuff that the public can't even begin to imagine. So they know, and it's just a matter of time that we've got to keep putting the pressure on them until they tell us.
Do you think perhaps they're developing some of that in their own technologies is why they're kind of keeping things secret?
I don't think that they're able to develop in their own technologies what these other civilizations have. And my reasoning for that goes back, well, one thing, if you look at old paintings back in the 1500s, 1600s, 1400s, whatever, there's UFOs in the skies in these paintings, and then there are spirits, like I have talked to Native American spirits that hang around the places that they have lived here in Florida, and I've made contact with them. And they have told me that they saw these vehicles in the skies back then, when obviously there was no technology of any kind that existed of any such thing, So these are technologies that are way far above and beyond what we've been able to do. Have we been able to grab some of that and reverse engineer it? Maybe, but if we have, it's a poor.
It's minimal, huh?
Yeah, it's a poor counterfeit as to what's actually out there and what these craft can do. I have seen the maneuvers that these things can do, and it just beggars the imagination. It's unbelievable.
Do you think that they can time travel or travel interdimensionally, possibly?
I do feel that they can travel interdimensionally. I don't know about time travel, but given the nature of what I've seen and what we know at this point, that wouldn't be too surprising. That gets into a whole man, if time travel is possible, that really screws you up. But, you know, I can't say that it's beyond the realm of possibility.
Fascinating stuff. So, real quick, can we touch on your book, your other book? Is that, I
A
believe
Knock in
it's
the
Knock in
Attic,
the Attic?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, A Knock in the Attic, that's actually kind of a prequel to Writing with Ghost Angels and the Spirits of the Dead. Knock in the Attic is, I love the title because it's from a literal paranormal experience my wife and I had when we lived in upstate New York, and that's in the book. But this book I started with that experience in my childhood when the old black ghost woke me up and scared the life out of me. And it goes through kind of the highlights of my childhood into my teenage years, into my young adulthood, and talks about what it was like to grow up psychic and to grow up inundated with all these paranormal experiences. And I discuss more paranormal experiences in here. There's a lot more fascinating things in there. I discuss religion and how that relates to the paranormal and spirituality. I became an ordained minister eventually, and for a very short time was associate pastor of a small church. And I discuss how all of that interplayed and what went on there. And then eventually come on up to, you know, the point where I became a professional psychic and began to read for clients worldwide and all that type of thing. Then it follows my move from Texas to New York, and then from New York to Florida, and all the paranormal experiences in each location and everything that happened there. And for the very first time in that book, A Knock in the Attic, that's where I write about my paranormal investigation of the Lincoln assassination and some of the other more exciting paranormal investigations, what it was like to meet Uri Geller, the famous psychic, to meet him in person and to eventually become friends with him. Not like super, super close friends, but, you know, we're friends, we stay in contact. And so that's in there, and a lot of fascinating things, a lot of fun things. So that's a good read. And then I have a third book I'm in the process of writing now, which is going to be kind of a psychic toolbox, is how my wife describes it. Each chapter is going to teach you, and these are all things I've gleaned from my own experience and learned myself, or the other side has taught me over the years. And each chapter will teach you a specific psychic technique, for example, psychometry, what it is, how to develop it, how to use it, and then the real world application of it. So it's not just a parlor trick. It's not just something you do and everybody goes, ooh, woo, but the real world application of that. And that's where so many people, I think, kind of miss the boat, is they don't tell you what to do with it once you've learned how to do it. You know, there is a real world application to all of these tools and techniques. So each chapter in this book will have one specific technique that it covers, like scrying, you know, crystal ball gazing, so on and so forth, the tarot, psychometry, what it is, how to do it, how to learn it, how to use it, and then the real world application of that. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm in the process of working on that now, and hopefully it'll be out the end of the year, first part of next year.
Excellent. One more quick question.
Sure.
Your thoughts on reincarnation.
Man, I don't know. You know, Dylan, that's something that there is a little bit of compelling evidence out there for the possibility of it, and then there's a lot of evidence that's not so compelling. So I kind of reserve judgment on that. I'm not going to say that it isn't or that it's not possible. It's just not anything that I've ever felt comfortable hanging my hat on and trying to live my life by. You know, for one thing, if I am reincarnated and I was an axe murderer 200 years ago, I don't know it now and I don't remember it now. So I've got enough on my plate right now trying to live my life and exercise my gift, take care of my family, help as many people out as I can, and so on and so forth. So my plate's full in the here and now. And since I have no evidence or no proof, anything I can hang my hat on from any previous lives, I don't get too bent out of shape about it.
That's valid. I can dig that.
Yeah.
Where can we find what you're doing? You know, pick up one of your books, and when's the release?
Sure.
When's the release date of the new one? You got a date for that?
I don't have a date for that yet. Hopefully by the end of the year, or at least by January, February next year, I'm hoping. The books that are out now, you can get both of these. They're available at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon. There's a bunch of mom and pop bookstores that carry them, and I've got links to those on the website for each one. Walmart carries them online. You can get them both at Walmart. Go to my website, which is writingwithghosts.net. Ghost is plural, writingwithghosts.net. That'll tell you all about that book. You can even read the introductory chapter there, the first chapter. Has links on there where to buy it. And then the second book, which is my newest book, just came out in February this year. That's a knockintheattic.net. So you go to knockintheattic.net. That'll give you all the information there about that book. It's got links to buy it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever you want to, a bunch of small mom and pop stores. And then if you want to know more about me or schedule a reading with me, you can go to johnrussell.net. And that's got all the information there you want. It's got my media credentials and testimonials. I've got over 80 client testimonials on my website about me and how my psychic gift developed and so on and so forth. So you can find out all the information there. And I keep everything updated with, like I have a media appearances page where all the blogs, radio shows, podcasts, everything I'm on, those are all there and people can listen to those, the ones that are recorded. There's links to all the ones recorded I've done in 2020 and so far this year. There's several of those to listen to, including yours will be there when we get that linked up. So that'll be there to listen to. And I do promote those real heavily through my pages and through Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I'll make people aware of the podcast I've been on. So hopefully get you some more representation as well.
Excellent. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. And I feel like we could sit here another hour or two and talk. We gotta do this again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, give me a holler and we'll definitely do that. I really appreciate you having me on and look forward to doing it again.
Excellent. Thanks, John.
All right. Take care.